Hey, welcome back. This is my part. Keep your mouth shut. Give this guy a mic and he goes off. Hey, anyways, what we're going to talk about today and we want to cover a little bit is quad drive and its relationship to the swing. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. Should I use my quads in the swing?
No.
Okay, well that sums it up. Thank you for watching and tune in next time when we cover such topics as, are kettlebells heavy?
So a lot of people, this is a question we get a good bit. We got it again the other day. People aren't sure whether or not they should use their quads. I think, part of it comes down to this whole, the swing has to be a hinge. It's got to be super hip dominant. You got to go super, you got to go super deep, yada, yada, yada. If a swing is squatty, then it's not bad and it's going to hurt your back. And most of that stuff's nonsense, or at least not complete enough to make sense. Mm-hmm. But I think that's where it comes from. The short answer is you always have to use your quads. You're always using your quads in your swing. The question is, do you emphasize them? Okay.
Right.
And the answer is, we think yes. Now, if you look at, let's say, slow motion and the way your body is bending, you are performing a level change. Okay. You're going from, so let's go ahead and go through a swing here. Okay. So you were going from standing, okay, to folded, back to standing, and forget about what everything else is doing. You're using the kettlebell as resistance. You're creating force with it. That force is causing resistance to your folding and unfolding. Okay, so if we're looking at a level change, your knees have to they have to bend. They have to work. Okay, so if you have a joint in between the thing that you're moving and the floor, you should use it in a very, very simple, in a very, very simplistic way.
Makes sense.
It's there, you should use it. This was a really big game changer for me, both in terms of the swing and the snatch, once I got the quad drive. And again, a lot of it is the culture. People think that, you gotta have this super deep bend and blah, blah, blah. And it takes away from some of the real power of the exercise. So that's one question we get. Now, another one is,
what order? I mean, should I be using my quads first then? Should I stick with my hips and then quads, or at the same time? What is it? It's a mix-up.
So one thing I do,
Not again.
so now it seems kind of silly, but it's very, very effective. When I have a question like that, I start to think in my brain, okay, how can I replicate this? And let me take this question to its logical conclusion. Go ahead and bend your knees, bend your hips. Okay, so get back in the bottom of your swing. Oh, so
yes, you can put your staff in my gut.
So go ahead and straighten your knees, but don't come forward into the stick. So don't let your hips come forward, but straighten your knees. Okay, so you see the back coming up. Okay, so that's a problem. Or at first you wanted to just go all the way backwards. Okay, so if the hips don't come forward first, you don't have the proper propulsion of...
Stretch those hammies out right there.
Yeah, you don't have the proper propulsion. So a really, really simple way to check this is to just try it. Does it work?
Right.
Do you look like you're going to poop your pants? If the answer is yes, it's probably not a great strategy for your swing.
So hips first.
Say hips first. You gotta do hips first. So let the hips come forward. Now, there is still going to be, go ahead and do a couple swings and look at the bell. Look at where the bell is started. So we always look over our movement objective. What is the objective of this? The objective is to move the bell from the floor to the end of his arms. Roughly chest level, that's where he's going for. That's the movement objective. You cannot have a strictly horizontal motion and accomplish that. Right. Otherwise, the bell would go forward and it wouldn't raise off the floor. So there is some vertical. That'd be interesting. We have more horizontal though. It's a primary horizontal force vector here. So what we want to really look at is, when are the hips over the feet? So if you go slow, you don't need to actually swing. So as he comes forward, as the hips, so go ahead back slower, go ahead, come forward. Right about now, he has the hip getting closer to the knee, okay? He's gonna begin to use those quads and he can lock them both out at the same time. Boom, okay? So there are a few little goofy biomechanics things they look at the whole idea of summation of forces, adding them together. So if you have force production from the hip, force production from the leg, then adding them together is going to, let's say your hips produce a force factor of 10. That's all made up nonsense. And your knees, produce a force factor of 8. Then together they're going to be 18.
Right.
Whereas otherwise you just have 10.
Yeah.
So you want to add those forces together. There are also some ideas that suggest the joints that are closer to the center of your body should contract first. Okay, so the hips are closer to the center of your body. You want them to contract first. We also have an idea of we don't want them to contract at exactly the same time. So go ahead and go back into your hips again. Now, if you do a knee drive and a hip drive same time, you're not really adding those together. Okay,
right.
You want to have hips first and then knees. Because you want the first force to be finishing right around the time the second force is starting, so they will add together a little bit better. Otherwise, the second joint moving will kind of take away some of the force from the first joint, and we don't want that.
Yeah, you can totally feel that too, and I just did. Boom. It feels like, things get tight when it happens.
Sure.
But it just feels like it locks, and it actually feels like I'm driving into the ground a bit more.
You are. You should be anyway.
18 points on that one.
Another thing is if we look at the base of support. So we always want to think about gravity. We want to think about center of mass. We want to think about balance. For any exercise, any kettlebell skill, but specifically with ballistics now. So if we have an imaginary circle at his feet, around his feet, okay, that is his base of support, okay? His center mass, go ahead and point to that. That is going to be the point where he has the most balance. So as he comes back, you can see that his, especially with the kettlebell, put your arms back like you're doing your backswing, his center of mass would be behind him. He has to move his torso forward to offset that, okay? So because that center of mass is moving back, and it would theoretically be outside of his base of support if he didn't offset it with his torso. So if he were to go into that position with the kettlebell, and here, hold on to this, lean back, stand up straight and lean back.
Oh, like this?
Yeah. So you see how he wants to fall back?
Yeah.
So he needs to offset that.
That was a truss exercise, by the way.
He needs to offset the center of mass shifting backwards by moving his torso forward, so the center of mass goes forward. So he's not going to be able to effectively move a joint until he's balanced. His body's not going to give his brain the ability to contract and work, at least not effectively, until he knows he's not going to eat shit and fall. So
cool.
What we want then is to have the hips come forward, and roughly when they're over the knee, then we can get that explosion up.
All right, I like that. Okay, well, that answers a lot of the stuff, but what makes a squatty squat swing? Squatty squat swing? All right, that's a new one. I'm going to use that in the next program. Join Kettlebell Club for your squatty squat swings. And what's the difference between like a squatty swing and like a real hip dominant swing, and how do the quads like kind of play a factor in that?
So there's a lot of people will think that if it's squatty, it can't be a swing. Again, I don't really subscribe to that. I also don't think that your back is automatically going to be injured if you do a squatty swing. A pretty famous study that Stu McGill did that was checking the core contraction surrounding kettlebell exercises. He used swings that were specifically in the research article called out as squatty. And if you know anything about Stuart McGill, which you should, he's got this beautiful mustache and really, really amazing work.
Glorious.
He's very big on protecting the spine. So there are a lot of factors that are going to determine whether a swing is going to hurt your back or not, but whether or not it's squatty is not one of them. Now, when you get into the idea of, well, if I use my quads, will it make me have a squatty swing? And it really is going to come down to timing. Mm-hmm. So it's going to come down to timing and direction. So if you go ahead and do your last, do your regular swing. So you can see the quads are driving. Hips first, then quads. So the quads are definitely working. So one, we have a general direction of his movement. So you can see you see him kind of being traced. He's kind of making this arc with the kettlebell. Okay, it's going to be of a particular size. Now, and you can see a very clear horizontal and vertical shift in his motion in his body. Now, don't do it with that. You don't even need a kettlebell. Go ahead and do what's kind of a squatty swing, and you're really looking. You can see he's got a primarily vertical force vector. Hips and quads are moving at the same, or hips and knees are moving at the same time. He may even be moving his knees first.
Yeah,
So,
feels like it maybe a little bit.
now, will your squatty swing be as powerful as a more hip dominant swing? I don't think that's possible. I've never seen anatomy where that works. When you look at ballistics and you look at force, one of the real time and distance are kind of the same thing. Okay, you need one to have the other. As you go back into your swing, okay, and you look at your starting point, when you look at the actual amount that the kettlebell displaces or moves, so it would be right around here, okay, all the way up to here.
I have nightmares.
So go ahead. So we have a lot of distance that we could measure. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if you change that and then you have just this up and down swing, the bell doesn't move as far. And when you don't have the same distance, or you don't have the same time over which the impulse is the thing that moves the kettlebell. If you don't have the same distance or time over which the impulse can add or start to increase, assuming the same force. Now we're assuming that the force would be equal. In fact, I think you're going to be able to handle more weight going backwards, so it's probably going to be even greater force. But if you have the same force but more time over which that force can accumulate, it's going to result in more power. So your squatty swing will not be as powerful. But what we're really looking at here is what makes a squatty swing versus more of a hingy swing. And the question really is timing, so what moves and when, and what is the predominant motion, as well as what is of the body, and then what is the predominant shape that you produce. So you can see if you have a very narrow swing, you're not really producing a lot of, there's not a lot of displacement, it's more up and down. That's going to be a squatty swing. If your knees are moving either before or at the same time as your hips, that's going to be a squatty swing. But you absolutely can and should use your quads during a regular hip dominant swing.
All right, let it be known. Get out there, make sure you're contracting those quads in the right order. And if you miss the order, rewind it and check it again. All right, well, is that it?
I think
That's it for me too. All right, I've had enough with this brown stick being jammed in me in places. And we'll see you next time. So make sure you like this, comment, all that good stuff. Follow us where you can see us. All right, stay strong.